This year's latest impaired driving legislation has had some motorists up in arms about new rules. These include the mandatory alcohol screenings that could have police showing up at someone's front door. Halton Police says they hear those concerns loud and clear. And on our way to talk over coffee, Sergeant Ryan Snow says he wants to clarify those concerns for drivers.
You know, it's one of those things that's definitely been a little bit overblown, and we're trying to ensure that everyone understands a few things. Policing is an extremely regulated activity on our roadways. So when a police officer stops you, he still has a rule book. He still has expectations that he has to fulfill. And these didn't evaporate back on the 18th of December when these new changes came into effect. So what the law says predominantly about traffic stops is that the police have been, and for a very long time, can stop you in order to check for sobriety, mechanical fitness, the fact that you have a driver's license and your vehicle's insured. And those are things that police are allowed to lawfully stop people for.
Roadside breath demands have changed. If a driver denies one, regardless if they've been drinking, they'll be charged and fined as if they've been drinking and driving over the legal limit.
You get stopped by the police officer and the officer says, you know what, I need a sample of your breath, and provides you breath demand. If the officer does that, you are lawfully required to provide. And if you don't provide that breath sample, you're actually going to be arrested and you're going to be charged criminally with refuse. So the best advice I can provide to anybody is if you're stopped by a police officer, don't argue with why you were stopped. If you believe that there's an issue there, you can deal with it later, but provide a breath at the time. Provide the samples the officer requires, because at the end of the day, if you haven't been drinking, you've got absolutely nothing to fear.
Sergeant Snow admitted that there are many people who have suggested that more police power to make mandatory alcohol screenings might be an infringement on people's rights. But Sergeant Snow says these laws help keep drivers who are able to hide how drunk or impaired they are off the road.
They could hide the effects of alcohol for that very limited period of time where they interact with an officer. And there are a lot of individuals on a roadway that can speak with an officer, have alcohol in their system, but end up being able to pass through where the officer hasn't detected that odor of alcohol.
We finally arrive for coffee. And Snow has more to discuss about the 2-hour rule, where drivers can also be charged for impaired driving, even if they're off the roadways.
One of the areas that there's a lot of confusion about in the public is this concern the police can come to my home and can go and demand a breath sample from me. You are responsible for your breath alcohol level for up to 2 hours after driving. So when the police officer does actually make a demand for a breath sample from you, probably not the time to debate it. Your best bet is to provide a sample. Okay, if you believe that that breath sample wasn't lawfully obtained, that's probably where you're best off consulting legal counsel and asking for some advice.
Sergeant Snow says it's perfectly all right to have questions about new legislation, and police officers are happy to answer them.
If there's something you're not sure about, stop and ask a police officer. Educate yourself, but also be careful or choosy as to where you source out information. You know, I'm sure people have heard that don't go and diagnose your medical ailment on the internet. Okay, it's something I hear that I see my own family members doing that, but it's the same thing when it comes to the law. You know what? Be informed. Ask good questions. You see a police officer, most police officers I know, we're happy to go and talk about the things we do for a living.
Overall, the message is simple, and officers like Sergeant Snow want to work together with the public to keep roads safe with this new legislation.
We are not there to go and make enemies of the public, but what we do figure is that for all of those people out there, and it's the majority of the motoring public, that drive safely and respect the laws and want to ensure they get where they're going safely and not hurt others, those people are who we're counting on to applaud our efforts and will ultimately cooperate with the police, support what we're doing, and call in when they see an impaired motorist.
For Halton News, I'm Natalie Stoberman.